Live from Cologne is BTV. Let's go.
That's right.
All right.
Okay, kick it up.
I'm Bough. I'm Vice President of Global Media and Consumer Engagement for Mondelez International. Mondelez makes some of the world's most favorite brands, whether it's Oreo, Milka, Trident, Wheat Thins, Triscuits, so on and so forth. So we're the world's largest snacking company.
Fantastic. And you're also well known as a company as an innovative marketer with taking sort of like cutting edge or bleeding edge approaches to new developments. So I guess I start off by saying how important is television to Mondelez? Television in the traditional linear sense.
TV is more important than ever now. But I think what's interesting about television is that, the large majority of my job is to invest our TV dollars around the globe. But I think what's interesting now is that we're seeing new ways to integrate the use of television and digital. And so I think that's where the conversation, the biggest part of the conversation needs to change, which is it's not either or. I kind of disagree with your point about lower down in the funnel. I don't necessarily see video as that. I see us looking at TV not as a TV strategy and then a video strategy, but as a video strategy overall. I mean, at the end of the day, what drives purchase, and that's what we care about, is driving the bottom line, is reach. And what we can do with digital video is create a video strategy that adds unduplicated reach to television. So that combination, and we can also create a continuity strategy. So instead of having to be on air 13 weeks or 15 weeks, we can spread that out and actually be on air, almost 52 weeks out of the year because our consumers are buying 52 weeks.
Right, so I'm interested in this notion of why marketers are focused on the more digital aspects of how television is evolving. So maybe take it back a step and talk about linear television. How important overall is it to the company in terms of share of spend across categories?
Linear television is hugely important. I mean, just the sheer reach of the eyeballs are tremendous. But what's more important is that combination. So I talked yesterday a little bit about the work that we did with Cadbury. So our ability to tie Facebook and TV together and deliver 21% additional unduplicated reach using Facebook. Or the work that we've done with Trident and Fuse, #1 music station targeting 18 to 34. We would have reached 18% of our target demographic, adding Twitter as an additional distribution platform for the core video that we shot, the 30-minute TV integration that we cut up into 2-minute slots. We were able to increase that to 50% reach. So it's a different game than asking just how important is linear. But the big question is what's the future of bringing those two things together? And I think the most exciting thing about linear is the digitization of linear. So we're all looking and talking about programmatic, and the industry is spending a lot of time. But on average, if you really look at the spending breakdown, 20% is spent in digital, right? So that's really 20% of the conversation. The other 80%, which is exciting, is the linear and the future of linear. And so if you were at the upfronts, for example, this year, you would have heard a number of the linear players talking about the programmatic future of television. And to me, that's really exciting. So why we care about programmatic, one is the data approach, but two is the long game of where it's actually going.
Now you framed a lot of that in terms of your objectives and maybe KPIs in terms of reach. Do you still think of it from a demo standpoint, or are there other metrics you're looking for with this new addressability?
So addressability drives audience capability. And so at the end of the day, the big shift has been, I no longer have to just purely look at demos. And that's why right now I've been talking a lot about, look, it's a data arms race, because data will allow me to identify audiences. The moment I continue to have addressable media, as linear becomes addressable, then I can actually buy audiences. The waste comes down, the value of that per person buy goes up, and the ability for me to drive the business becomes a lot larger.
Do you think that the advent of that addressability changes how you look at the results of linear TV? I mean, are you now going to be more interested in results-oriented as opposed to proxies? So demos are proxies. We had a conversation at Cannes with Doug Ray and others at Nielsen around this notion of maybe moving from proxies to actual results and tying into in-store purchase data and things like that.
That's where it'll go. I mean, the industry still has a little bit of ways to go. I mean, measurement is still, in my mind, relatively rudimentary when you look at tying all the channels together. We're still at kind of an infant stage. I actually wish the industry would focus on putting a lot more pressure. I blame the client. I actually think the clients are at fault. I don't think the clients have put enough pressure on the industry to move faster. But ultimately, that's where it goes. But I think that the other thing that's really interesting is that all of a sudden certain media slots on linear become way more valuable. So the moment I know that I can buy a piece of quote unquote remnant media that is actually this specific audience, the value of that remnant media grows. So I think we're going to see an entire sea change of the economics of linear TV.
Yep. And is that a zero-sum game? Will there be a trade-off?
I think it's going to increase their business.
It's going to increase their business.
Yeah. I think it's going to be a massive shift. I think they're going to benefit a lot. And I actually think what they bring, true talk, I think one of the scariest things that I think the digital, having been a pure play digital guy, that the digital space has is that they're spending so much time focused on that 20%. And when you look at, let's just use the US for example, the advent of the new fronts, to me, the new fronts are the worst thing that's ever happened because it's become a bifurcation of media and continues to drive that linear versus digital. And in reality, you have so many players crushed into trying to fight for this 20% that they're missing the boat of what's going to be unlocked in this 80%.
Yeah,
I'm very worried.
I've repeatedly said that a lot of these, digital video players who talk about disrupting and crushing TV, I said, you should probably change that adjective to enable. Right, because the addressability of linear TV is actually digital's future in my book.
And it all melds.
I've always
thought
the
problem is that they haven't educated the buyer on the other side. So
right.
They haven't spent the time educating the TV buyer on the other side, and they've left kind of them alone and in a lot of respects alienated them. And I think it's a real challenge in the industry.
Well, I think there is a cultural difference between, buyers of TV and buyers of digital. They're looking for different things. They're probably different generations, and it's probably a little bit of an education for TV buyers to learn exactly what's available, what's capable, as opposed to scaring them with, we have a completely different
That's my
system.
point, is that, look, having made the change to all media, I had a chance to see behind both sides, and I think that's really where the flaw is that it's always been us versus them versus let's go together.
Yep. So, of all the players in the ecosystem, I'm curious to ask the final question, which is, who's really driving this change? I've always thought it goes where the money is, so it's the marketer. That when you guys decide,
the client is always to blame,
right? Or to credit,
just kidding.
No, because the technology intermediaries will build tools. Yep. Publishers will sell it any way they can maximize yield, and agencies will go along with whatever the marketer says. So ultimately, I think it sort of comes down to you guys.
It always comes down to us. I think it's a client-driven ecosystem. I think in some respects, clients have been lazy because the job has been a lot easier. Now, as technology takes on a larger, as there's more tech entering into the marketplace, it becomes a lot harder to do this job. So it requires a lot more effort. And I think that the biggest thing is that there will continue to be a separation. Clients that live in a generation ago, yep, and clients that are actually preparing for this current generation of how to be a marketer. And what scares me most is that a lot of times we haven't focused on what does it really mean to be a marketer in this generation. Yep. And I really worry that as a client group, that we're still not pushing ourselves hard enough to actually, and by the way, we're doing a disservice to our organizations because there's a lot of value to be unlocked here, and that's why we push so hard.